good morning, everyone. And as we are waiting for people to arrive, please come and occupy the seats at the front. Come and children, you can come up here as well. Don't worry. Thank you, Kieran. All right, so good morning and welcome to North Thames Community Sunday Service, and welcome to all our viewers who are watching on the live stream. So have you had a good week? Yes. Well, let's take a minute to share with the person next to you something about your week. The highs and Mike the lows. So yeah, go ahead. And if you're watching online, please put something in the chat. It would be nice to hear from you, some interactive chat. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for sharing. I'd love to let you talk more, but we do have a deadline today because there's another event. So we're going to speedily continue, and I will ask to invite our dearest Heavenly Parent. We thank you for bringing us all safely together, and also for allowing us to be gathered both here in person and online, together with our extended North Thames community. Today, Father, we will hear from our elder brother, Pastor William, and he has a message for us which we may, in some sense, already think we understand, but today is an opportunity for us to go deeper and to hopefully become wiser in our understanding of the spirit world and the physical world. And in our songs, in our worship, we will be reminded of that theme and that topic. So let us prepare our hearts, let us take this time to really be in tune through our singing and through our hearts and minds to receive your words. I report this and offer this prayer in my name. Ajay Rai, husband and father of a blessed central family, Arju. All right, so let's now stand and say pledge number 1. So as we do this, I'd like to again invite you to consider when we say the pledge, we don't just say the words. And if you're new to the community or you're even new to us as a movement, then The pledge is a bit like saying a quest. It's like telling a story about a family that's going to go on a journey. And the first pledge is like the first step or the first mountain that you have to climb to that peak. So as we say the pledge, I really want to encourage you to think of it not just as words, not just as scripture that we have to repeat and somehow memorize, but think of it as a story. And in fact, it's actually your story. And it's not just the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, it's the family quest. So with that in mind, let's say family pledge number 1. Our family, the owner of Chunilguk, pledges to seek our original homeland and build the kingdom of God on earth and in heaven, the original ideal of creation, by centering on true love. Please be seated. Okay, now's the exciting time we can welcome up our fantastic band. So please, band members, come up and join me on stage. Let's give them a round of applause.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're getting some exercise today, so you can stand up again, and let's sing "How Great Is Our God" as our opening song.
for those of you watching online, we will be also sending the announcements on the WhatsApp groups. So, first of all, the next week's service on the 29th, it's going to be starting at 10 a.m. and it will be the North Thames Holy Day service. And it's going to be held in Romford, East London. So, a bit of a trip. You can get on the Elizabeth line from here, and it's not too bad. So please do make an effort to come to East London and join the community next week on Sunday. So the service will be streamed as well, if you can't make it to East London. And it's going to be also streamed from South London. And our national leader, Dr. Michael Balcom, he will be giving the sermon. So if you're attending, please bring something to share for potluck lunch, like we normally would do. So bring a little dish or your favorite whatever meal to share for our potluck lunch. And again, as I mentioned, if you have any questions about that, there will be more information during the week for WhatsApp. And also, maybe that's like the Eurovision or the BAFTA Awards when they tell you to hurry up, right? Get off the stage. You know, like, wrap it up. Okay. Oh yeah, the other point I wanted to make was that, yeah, our Sunday service coordinators, so Cindy and Irene. Irene, do you want us to stand up so everybody can see you, just in case they don't know who you are? There's Irene. If you have any questions, please get in touch with them as well. You can talk to them in person afterwards. They know more than I do. Okay, another announcement, something new. We have a newsletter for the community, and he's not in the room as far as I can see, but let's just give a recognition, and also together with Chris, who helped to put this together, to Peter Schroeder. So we have a community newsletter. Yeah. So you might have already seen it. It's been sent out again through the normal channels, and I believe we have hard copies available. So if you prefer to have a hard copy, then Chris will have them available. Is that right, Chris? There they are. Look, have a look. You see? Fresh and hot off the press. Okay, so physical copies you can collect from Chris. And if you have not received it by email or WhatsApp, again, please come and talk to Irene or Simi, and they can set you up to make sure we've got your email or your WhatsApp details, and that way you can make sure that you keep in touch every week. One more announcement, and this is the final one. Today, after the sermon, we will have a committee meeting. So we have some members of the extended community who are here today. So committee members, can I also ask you to stand up? So just in case people don't know, if you're in the committee, please stand up. Irene, yes, you are, yes. Okay, so we'll be gathering today, and thank you, Karen, at the back, and others, to look at an exciting meeting that's going to be coming up on the 12th of February. So this is going to be taking place in East London again, and that particular meeting is an opportunity. Oh, the 12th? It's going to be here. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, that's right, we swapped. Okay, so LG, it is. On the 12th of February. More importantly, the purpose of this meeting is to put together our community consensus of what do we want to do in terms of our strategy and our vision for this year. So today we'll be planning that meeting to set up the format and to give some, I guess, a platform to invite the community to come on board. And what I specifically want to challenge you all to do is to become a community champion. And the way you can do that is if you have a burning desire or a project that you really want to develop, and you've just been waiting for perhaps for some initial support, or you want some like-minded people, like the band, they get together every Sunday morning, right, to practice. They're like-minded people, they want to come together to serve the community, and they come here in the morning, they practice, and you could see them, right, in the morning, just now as we prepare to come on stage. It's almost like having that sneak behind the scenes, backstage insight into what's going on. But this is just one example of how people can come together to serve the community. And you might have an idea of how we can do that better, how we can do that in perhaps also in terms of outreach. So if you have an idea, do watch out over the next week or so. Apart from obviously today's announcement, we'll be sending out some more information about how you can take your ideas and bring them to the stage. And then on the 12th, coming back to LG, there will be this meeting. We'll facilitate for everyone to be able to contribute. And the idea that, you know, whatever it is that we want to do, and ideas that, of course, our pastor has and others are trying to spearhead, let's make it happen. Let's do it. Let's not just talk about it, let's make it happen. And if you want to do something in terms of making an offering, well, let's try and make that possible. Let's empower each and every individual in our community to be able to make an offering. Okay? All right, so those are the main announcements, and now let's get back to the singing. Okay.
Okay, please rise again, and we'll be singing 2 songs before the main message. The first one will be Unite into One.
To all, come ye people all around the world, let's unite into one, spreading forth the glory of the Father and His great will forevermore. Unite, unite, let's unite into one, bring about one nation uniting all the people of the world. Raise the white cross on our banner, high above Mount Everest it waves. In the blue Pacific waters, cleanse the sword that brought the victory. Come ye people all around the world, let's unite into one. Now resolve to end the deep resentment of the long centuries past. Unite, 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 let's unite into one. Bring about one nation uniting all the people of the world. Build a fortress to defend a peace on the great new heaven and new earth. We will all sing hallelujah, safe within the bosom of the Lord. Come ye people all around the world, let's unite into one. Share the joy and glory of heaven, hidden so long from every eye. Unite, unite, let's unite into one. Bring about one nation uniting all the people of the world. All the people of the world.
Lovely. Let's now sing I Vow to Thee, My Country, our last song before the message.
I vow to thee, my country, all earthly things above, in time and all in
Thank you, band. So now let's be prepared and let's welcome our pastor, William Haynes, to give his message, Uniting the Spirit World and the Physical World.
Good morning, everyone. Unusually, I don't have a load of slides. Thanks, Kieran. And good morning to everybody online. Anybody know where this phrase comes from? Go on, have a guess. Family pledge. Which number? Number 5. Yes. So as you know, I've been working my way through the family pledge. And because I said, you know, when I was, I'm Jewish by birth, Christian by upbringing, and Mooney by choice. But when I went to church, Church of England, well, we used to sing that beautiful hymn. And I love that hymn because it's not just focusing upon this world, but also on the next world as well, and trying to bring the two together. Usually the only time you ever hear it being sung is actually on Remembrance Sunday. Anyway, so as I said before, I used to recite the creed, I believe, and it didn't make much sense to me. But when I heard the principle, it made sense. It helped me to understand my life, helped me to understand the world in which I live, and that's why I came to believe in it. And that's why it completely transformed and changed my life, as it did the lives of all of you who are here together and meeting true parents as well. And so it always bothered me that, you know, we would recite the family pledge just in the same way that I used to recite the creed on a Sunday morning. But actually, as Father said, and I've been through these quotes before, the family pledge is the essence of the principle and the essence of the stories of restoration. And so it's incredibly dense, just a few little sound bites, yeah, which need to be unpacked. So I've been working my way through it, and this time it's, as you know, unfortunately it wasn't the one we recited. Our family, the Ono Chungaguk, pledges to unite the spiritual world and the physical world as subject and object partners by centering on true love. So I'm not going to talk about the spiritual world, and because I'm not really interested in the spiritual world. Even though I was brought up a Christian, and as a Christian, I've noticed people are very much concerned about, am I saved? When I die, will I go to heaven? Yes, or will I go to hell? The concern was, what happens to me when I die and I go to the next world? And that never really interested me, because I thought, well, here I am. I'm in this world. One day, you know, go along to the next world. But this is the world in which I'm living. And so this desire for salvation and personal salvation is never really something that interested me very much at all, even though, as I said, I was brought up a Christian. And then it's only in time, as years have gone by, I realized actually because I'm Jewish. I have a Jewish soul. Now, if you read the Bible, there's very little in the Bible about the spiritual world. In fact, people are discouraged from thinking about it. And if you ask a Jew about the spiritual world, what happens when you die? Well, we don't know. That's not our focus. They believe in the life and the world to come, that there is a spiritual world, and occasionally in the Bible you'll see references to that. Jesus met with Moses and Elijah on the mountain Transfiguration before crossing over the River Jordan to go into Canaan. Moses and the people of Israel, they met with the commander of the army of the Lord, which is all the angels that were there supporting them. But the focus, and then of course there's a notorious story of Saul, who was, when he was very fearful, then he went along and saw a sorcerer, I guess, who conjured up the spirit of Samuel. But yeah, there's always a recognition there is a life after this world. But always the focus has been upon what can we do in this world. You know, very much this worldly focus. So you might wonder, where's this concern about salvation come from? Yeah. Where do these ideas just focus upon, am I saved or not? Actually, it didn't come from the Jewish tradition. which is concerned very much about salvation in this world, establishing a world of peace and justice in this world, establishing a world which we call Chungaguk in this world, not concerned about the next world. It actually came very much from the influence of the Greeks. I don't know if you read about many of the Greek stories about when people died and they cross over the river Styx. I can't remember the name of the bloke who rows you across. Might probably remember this. And entering into Hades. And a very, very gloomy kind of thing. So the Greeks had this idea, when you die, you go to this very gloomy place called Hades. And their concern was, how can I avoid going there? So the Greek religions, mystery religions, and particularly Gnosticism, are very concerned about personal salvation. How can I be sure that when I die, I'm going to go to a good place in the next world? And that was their entire focus, because they were afraid of dying. Jews never, biblical tradition there's never no sense of fear of death. The Greeks are very much afraid of dying, and so they had all these religions with all kinds of rituals that you go through, all kinds of passwords that you have to learn, all kinds of things that you have to do, and anyway, in order to be able to be assured that when you die, you go to a good place in the next world, you go to heaven. So when Paul was, after the crucifixion and the resurrection, and then Paul he was going out and he's preaching to the Gentiles, they wanted to know, how can I be sure I'm going to go to heaven? And so that's where this focus upon believing in Jesus came from. If you want to go to heaven, you have to believe in Jesus. And so I've met many Christians when I was witnessing. They say, "Are you saved?" And I say, "Well, it's not something I really ask myself. Not something I'm really focused upon. It's about trying to make the world in which I live a better place. Try and leave the world in which I live a better place." And sometimes people say, "Well, are you going to go to heaven?" I say, "Well, if you want to go to heaven in the next world, what do you have to do? You have to create heaven in this world. Because when you die, then your spirit goes into the next world just in the same state as it is today. Yeah. Nothing changes. It's not that God says, "Oh, well, you've been a bad person, you're going to go to hell," or "You've been a good person, you're going to go to heaven," or you believe the right doctrines, therefore you're going to go to heaven. It's all about what kind of world have you created in this life. And often you can see that when you attend someone's funeral or sungwa. What kind of impact and impression they made. Yesterday I was very fortunate, very blessed to be at Abbey's sungwa in Ireland. And it was so touching to see so many people from all over, not just Ireland, but people came from New Zealand, from Australia, from America. Sune Simon was sitting in front of us, and I looked at her, and she looks like Sune Simon's twin, but she's supposed to be in America. It can't be here in Dublin. And anyway, obviously she was. So she came all that way just for the weekend, just to attend Abby's sungwa, because it made such an impact upon her life. And listening to, some of you may have watched it online, and listening to these stories, you could see that she made a huge impact upon people in this world. And so when she goes to the next world, as she is, then she'll go to a place like that. And so this is what I think is most important, not to be concerned, am I saved, but what kind of world am I leaving behind me? And of course, it's not about individual salvation anyway. So the principle itself reconceptualizes the idea of salvation. You might remember the study guides, salvation equals restoration equals recreation. What that's doing is going about trying to recover the original biblical origins, which are not about, oh, am I saved or not? It's about restoration. Restoration is about restoring this world in which we're living. It's about solving the problems in this world, And so the principle then has always been trying to reorientate where Christianity, in my view, having been brought up a Christian, went wrong, where it became heavily influenced by a lot of other pagan ideas, non-biblical ideas. And the principle then is trying to reorientate it back to the biblical tradition. So ideas like predestination, all these sorts of ideas that occur within Christian theology, they're not biblical ideas, they're all influences from the pagan Greek world, where they believed in predestination, determinism. Everything's determined by the fates, Moira, no free will. Anyway, so, gosh, how did I get to be here? Anyway, lost my train of thought. Okay, so this then has always been the focus. And also the principle is not about individual salvation, it's our family. Yeah? So if you want to go to heaven, you need to create heaven. Where? Within the family. What does that mean? That means having good relationships between parents and children, between husband and wife, between siblings, with your uncles, aunts, cousins. And very touching again yesterday, listening to Abby's siblings talking about her, and you could see how incredibly, united the family was, how much they really loved each other. I was really struck by that. And that's what's important, how much we love each other. And so, I'm not such a great parent, and my wife will testify I'm not such a great husband. But so grateful that our own children, they love each other, and they support each other, and they do things together. And it really makes you happy to know that your children love each other, they get together for family occasions and things. And that's so important, because it's our family, the owners of Chungaguk. So it's about creating heaven, or within our family, and then within our community. So getting back to this unity of the spiritual world and physical world then. So, as I said, I've never been terribly interested in the spiritual world. Some people are, and I'm not. Okay, but doesn't mean I'm not aware of it. My grandparents, they used to live in a large, really old country house in Wiltshire, and I used to go and stay with them. And when I got up in the morning, every morning, the sitting room door was always open. But every night, I went round with my grandparents, my grandfather, and it's like the old house. I had shutters on the windows, went round closing all the shutters, locking all the doors, and closing all the internal doors as well to keep the heat in, because he didn't believe in central heating. And every morning the sitting room door was open. I said, why is the sitting room door always open? I was always up at the crack of dawn. And they said, oh, it's always been like that. There's a ghost that comes and opens the sitting room door every morning during the night. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, ever since they've been living there, that's what had happened. And they got a locksmith round, they changed the lock. Well, it wasn't an internal door, so it didn't have a key lock. But they changed the thing, but it always happened. And then my grandmother said that my grandfather, once he stayed up at night to see what was going to happen. And he stayed up, and this sort of light kind of appeared, and the door opened. And then after that, there was no point in worrying about this. We can't do anything about it. And so for me, that was just, okay, there's a ghost or a spirit that lives in this house, and every night it goes and just opens the door. Fine. And then on my mother's side also, there's also this very much awareness the spirit world is just reality. It's just the way it is. So when my mother's father died, then my aunt at the time happened to be in hospital. She was awaiting an operation. And so my grandfather died in 1968 during the flu pandemic of the time. And my mother wanted to go and tell her sister, obviously, but she didn't want to tell her sister because her sister herself was just waiting for an operation and didn't want to give her a shock. Anyway, my mother went in to see my aunt, and my aunt said, don't tell me, it's all right. Daddy came to see me before he went. I already know, because my grandpapa had come along and just visited and just said, whatever, I don't know what he said. Anyway, or even if he said it, but certainly my aunt was very much aware that he'd just passed away and saw him. And a similar thing happened when my mother died about 8 years ago. She was really old, and mentally she's 90% there. But then her carer said that just before, the last couple of days before she died, she said that her mummy and daddy, she said, had come to visit her, and they said they'll come back soon and they'll take her home. And so my mother then, she got another carer to get her out of bed and pushed her into the car, took her down to her regular hairdresser, and she got her hair done even though she was half asleep in the sort of salon. And then took her home, and my mother looked at herself in the mirror, and she was really happy. She was happy because her hair was done and makeup was done, and she went to bed and she died in her sleep. She wanted to look her best before she met her mum and dad and went home. So this is just, for me, that's just the way it is. The spiritual world's always been there. But I've never really been interested. It's just part of that. And, my wife's very much into angels, parking angels especially, helping to park cars. And I'm sure many of you who are on MFT, we learned about how to mobilize the spirit world, yeah? And there weren't coincidences. You got this sense you're working together with the spiritual world. And that, in that sense, is what it's all about, the unity of the spiritual world and physical world working together. And so, and I had this, as many of you know, I'm a bit of a skeptic. I mean, the Chongpyong Providence came around. Liberating ancestors. Seemed a bit expensive. Does it work? Anyway, so I remember I thought, well, I like Pascal. Pascal was a great French philosopher, mathematician, and he came up with something called Pascal's wager. And Pascal's wager is, he was a Christian trying to persuade people they should believe in God. He said, something like that, hopefully I'll get it, formulate it right. He said, either God exists or God doesn't exist. If God exists and you believe in God, then when you die, you're going to go to a nice place. Yeah? But if God exists and you don't believe in God, then when you die, you're going to go to a nasty place. On the other hand, if God doesn't exist, but you believe in God, then it's neither here nor there, because there is no life after death. And something like that. So he said, when you weigh up your options, if you believe that God exists, and God really does exist, and when you die, you go to a nice place. But if you don't believe God doesn't exist, but God really does exist, when you die, you go to an unpleasant place. So he said, whether God exists or not doesn't matter. When you're putting down your bets, it's better to bet on the idea that God does exist. So I thought to myself, well, I don't know if this sort of, ancestor liberation thing works. But I did the sums, and I thought, well, the first, 10 generations, well, it's kind of a bit expensive, $70 per generation. But after you get past that, it's only $10 a generation. And I thought, well, one day I'm going to die. And I'm probably going to meet my ancestors. And they're going to say to me, couldn't you afford $7 to get me liberated and blessed? And I thought, no, I couldn't. How can I say I can't afford $7 to get... And so I thought, well, if it's not true, I've only lost $7. I can afford that. If it is true, then, it's money well spent. Going to look my grandfather in the eye. Anyway, so I thought, okay, I'll just give it a go. I'll do a few and see if it makes any difference. And then, so I liberated a few and blessed a few. And then I don't see my sister very often. But for all her life, she's been a hardcore atheist. Anyway, so I spoke to her, and she said she's off to India. I said, oh, okay, what are you doing there? Going sightseeing? She said, no, I'm going to an ashram to learn how to meditate in complete silence. Oh, okay, that's interesting. What happened to you? And I thought, oh, maybe this is one of the ancestors, prodding away at my sister, getting her to develop a bit of a spiritual life, which she really is into nowadays. And then I got in touch with another aunt who I hadn't been in touch with for decades. Oh, that's interesting. I thought, well, maybe it does work. Maybe I should, liberate a few more. And then in 2006, my wife became seriously ill. Totally off the scale ill. And anyway, so it was incredibly stressful, but as part of the, kind of healing process, I guess, I thought it'd be good if she went to Chongpyong to convalesce. And at the same time, I thought, well, maybe you should, liberate a few more ancestors to support and help. And then she went back to Chongpyong a second time for 40 days, and she went back a second time. And all the time, I said what was wrong with her was just off the scale in terms of I don't even want to go into the percentages of people that survive. But I just felt, there has to be a way. And I felt there was like a sort of thread I needed to follow, and which also involved just turning down the whole brain radiation that she's offered as the solution, inverted commas. I just felt, it's not going to work. So it's very stressful, trying to pick one's way through this. But then, anyways, but at the same time, I just felt so much support. Stuff happened, coincidences happened. And anyway, just so many, I can't even go into them, hardly any of them. Anyway, so one of the things that did happen is that on the 40th day of Ruth's second time in Chongpyong, then on the last day, she couldn't be woken up. And fortunately, people knew what her condition was. She had brain tumors and things. And so, she was taken up to the hospital in Chongpyong. They gave her a scan, and then they realized what it was, another brain hemorrhage and a third tumor, and took her very quickly down to a hospital, a major hospital. Now, it was the best day of the year for this to happen, because it was, is it Chuseok? Anyway, everybody went home. So everything was closed. And so, all the doctors went home, the nurses went home. So there's one doctor, he happened to be the professor of neurosurgery, and he's an old man, and he said to all the other doctors, "Oh, you go home, I'm old, I'll stay in case anybody turns up." And so there's no planned operations, and so my wife had the best neurosurgeon, brain surgeon in Korea who did the surgery. Amazing. And lots of things like this happened. People are met and this, that, and the other. And I had this incredible sense that this was just a spiritual world working. If it had been the next day, she'd had on a plane, she would have died. If it had been 2 days later, I thought she'd just be overtired. She would have died. So she did exactly on the 40th day. And then Philip Hill, he and Petra, they're living in Wiltshire at the time. And Philip said, phoned me up and said, Ruth appeared in my kitchen this afternoon. I didn't know what she was doing. She's being shown around the spiritual world by these incredibly bright angels and things. And then she said, the very incredibly high spiritual being came down and, started beating Ruth, chest, and all these evil spirits started coming out. And then, then she went back into her body, and here she is, thank God. Anyway, so it was very much the sense that because of the liberation of the ancestors, because she'd been there for 40 days in Chongpyong, it's like some kind of condition for Daimonim and good spiritual world to intervene from the spiritual world to be able to help her. So uniting the spiritual world and the physical world is so important. And so, as a result of that, I thought, well, maybe I need to go and liberate some more. And then I had this amazing experience. I've got so many stories about this. What time I need to start? About this project in Palestine, again, where, I just met this person and just happened, educator, happened to know my he didn't know my grandfather. His father knew my grandfather because they're both in the Palestine police at the same time. And, started up this educational project together. At the time I was wondering, humming and hawing, should I do this? It's a lot of investment of time and money, and I don't have any, trying to recover something I'd done 25, 30 years before. And again, I thought, one day I'm going to die. It comes to everybody. I'm going to meet my grandpapa, and he's going to say to me, I set up that meeting, me and my friend, we set up that meeting with you and his son. What did you do? Okay, I better do this. Because that's the way it is, this sense of, this kind of presence of God in the spiritual world. And so it's very important then in that sense, I think, working with the spiritual world. And, I'm just standing here, just prattling away, So Philip said to me once, he said, William, when you give lectures, this is what it's like. Behind you, there's this huge bookcases, and there's these monks with their ladders, and they're running up and down these ladders, dropping books into your head. Okay, yeah, that's what it feels like sometimes. No idea what I'm going to say or where it's going to go. And I remember once, we were studying together, this was in Carp years ago, and one of the members there, he asked me a question. We were studying the principle. I said, I don't know what the answer is. And then anyway, a few weeks later, I said to him, ask me that question. I couldn't remember what the question was. Ask me the question. He said, well, you didn't know the answer. I know I didn't know the answer then, but ask me the question. He asked me the question, I gave the answer, because I was very much aware of the presence of one of my ancestors, a rabbi or somebody, who was there just. And then sometimes when I'm teaching, I say, people ask a question, say, oh, I'm sorry, that particular monk's not there. Ask me another time when they're ready to drop the book into my head. So it's very much about this. Our families, owner the Chungaguk, we want to unite the spiritual and physical world. And it's not about, what happens when I die? It's about working together with the spiritual world in cooperation, which of course means living a spiritual life. If you live a spiritual life, become aware of the presence of the spiritual world. And then, often they can protect you from having a serious accident or something. People often have an intuition. Oh, I shouldn't go there. I shouldn't do this. Sometimes we listen. Sometimes we don't. And if we don't, sometimes it's have regret. So it's very much important then to develop that kind of awareness, working together with the spiritual and physical worlds, and uniting them in that sense, and all centered upon true love. It's about loving our ancestors, and about loving not just our ancestors, but the people very much, which is easy to do because you can't see them. It's about loving our brothers and sisters, our cousins, our uncles, our aunts in this world, and thinking, okay, there's a problem here. Maybe I need to, try to restore that relationship. When Father said we're tribal messiahs, sometimes you think, oh, tribal messiah means over there, or but the tribal messiah is our tribe. That means my family, my brothers and sisters, my uncles and aunts and cousins, who I may not have never seen because my parents happened to fall out with them, or my grandparents fell out with them. It's about trying to restore those relationships within the family, and that's really important. I think that's what it's all about, because that's what Chungaguk is. It's our family, and our extended family, and of course our community. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So thank you all very much, and God bless you all. Have a great week. Thank you.
So before we have a chance to have some reflection and meditation, I'd like to just share my own insights from William's talk. When William was talking about that old house that he was growing up in and the ghost that was always opening the door, do you remember that bit? I was thinking, why do ghosts always do the most useless things? Why can't they shut the door or turn off the lights or maybe even do the bed in the morning? That would be useful, right? They always do the most. I mean, we hear about these stories, right? When ghosts are doing these things, it's like, why? What's the point? But at the same time, I think as William was then alluding to later on, there is this presence. Each one of us has perhaps an aura or a presence, and I've been told about my own also, if you like, presence. I remember someone telling me about this, and I think we've all probably had some kind of experience in terms of like the sense of being protected, or the sense of like even not just in your waking conscious, kind of living being, but even perhaps, in your dreams and in other kinds of subconscious moments where you feel like there's something there. And I think, we can perhaps all feel that in that way there's something going on. And then finally, as William was talking about also our ancestors, I started to think about, if I was a spirit, I would very much want to be with my posterity, with my children, no matter how many generations. I want to be with Arian's children and Arian's children's children. With Simi's, I had this vision just this week of Simi's daughter and having coffee with her. Literally, I was sitting and I just had this vision. I could see Simi's daughter, and I was having coffee with her. And it was just a beautiful vision that I had. And I think in this way, we will all become that spirit. And we will all be that being that wants to be there for the next generations to come. And in my case, I'm very much looking to the fourth generation. As we say second and third, I have my eye already on the fourth generation, and maybe I'll tell you about that another time. So thank you again, William, for the sermon, and let's now have a time for reflection.
Okay, thank you for taking this time to reflect. Please rise and join us in singing the offering song, Song of the Banquet.
Your new life that once was sown within the garden's fertile soil, sprouting
before I invite Ann Carter to give the offering prayer, I just would like to mention that if you would still like to make your offering today, you can also do so using your debit card. We have a sum up machine, which is the similar kind of machine you'd find when you go to a shop to pay for your coffee. You can tap and make a donation. So Chris has the sum up machine at the back. And likewise, if you're watching online, if you look below the comments in the video, you'll see a link, and you can also make your donation online in that way. Thank you.
Most precious Heavenly Parent, we thank you so much. You care for us. You gave us our daily bread. You give us the money we need. You provide for us continuously. Somehow, we do not know where things come, but somehow it happened because you care and you love us so much. So we thank you, and we want to offer you this, the fruit of all what you give us. And we thank you that we can offer you these donations and offerings. And we thank you that you are guiding the people who are going to use that money so that they can use it the most appropriately and the best possible way. So I thank you for all this, and I ask you to bless this offering and report in the name of Anne from the Carter Bless family.
So let's say thank you to the band as they leave the stage. And please be seated. In addition to the band, and it was very good to see Chayun and Andre. Andre, let's have a catch up afterwards. And I love Andre. Had a great time at the winter workshop together. Yeah, well done, Chayun. Good catch. So thank you, first of all, to not only our band, but also let's give a hand to Joseph over there handling the live stream. He's had a marathon weekend because not only was he here this morning nice and early to set up, but he was also conducting the UPF event yesterday. So thank you, Joseph, for all your investment. And is she up with us, Auntie Naomi? She is cooking our lunch. So let's give her a hand. Hopefully she's... Let's give her a big hand so she can hear us downstairs. Also, I think they might still be here, but I want to say thank you to all the children for coming to Sunday service and being really well behaved. Well done, kids. And finally, and once again, thank you to everyone for coming today. Thank you for watching online. Have a blessed week, and we will see you again. When? 29th. Thank you very much. All the best. Let's have lunch.